Welcome, friends. So today I'm going to bring you the energy reading for August, and this one was interesting. I'm finding that each one is unique, from the weekly energy readings to the monthly, and it's almost as if it speaks to the energy of the month, the delivery of it, the reception of it. So I invite you, just in your life as well, if you're receiving any sort of energy or message, just also notice the delivery of it, because that also gives you a lot of information. And that was actually how the energy of August first came through, was through the body. I started tuning in on July 23rd, and I immediately got this pain in my left groin area. It was sudden, it was intense, but it was fleeting. And I immediately knew Sacral Chakra. Sacral Chakra, okay. Because I speak the language of the chakras. And so I've been really sitting with this idea that we are in communication with the body. The body communicates to us. We communicate with the body because we are not separate, right? It's a way of kind of giving your own self information that you maybe wouldn't otherwise be conscious of if we can tune in and listen. But it's essentially us giving ourselves information. And there's books about what things might mean, and I think that's a great entry point. But it's also going to speak the language of you, right? So really tuning in to receive your own personal message, right? For me, very much connected to the chakras. And so I knew immediately Sacral Chakra. And then when I pulled symbols, it was space, yet again, perspective, and animal. And so when I sat with that, it can be interpreted in so many ways, and I invite you to do so. Please just know this is just a perspective, right? May or may not resonate. It was all about what roles are serving you and what roles are no longer serving you. So what does that mean? That means that, again, if this resonates, it might come up, it might not. Also knowing this is not, a unique energy to August. This might be something that has been building and building and building. And so an example of that, I can't personally relate to this, but I know many people can, is it's August. And a lot of kids go off to school in August. And as a parent, a child going off to school, especially if it's the last one to go off to school, your role as a parent or as a guardian changes. It doesn't have to, but circumstantially it's different. And how is your role going to shift? How is it going to serve you moving forward? And in what ways are you holding on to that role that are no longer serving you because things have shifted? So that's just one example. And that is an example too, right? How it's showing up in your life. And when things show up in our lives, I find, again, it's a way of seeing it, it's not the way of seeing it. It oftentimes is a mirror of showing us something that we need to see. And we can choose, right, to kind of fall into that victimhood of why me, why is this happening to me? Or we can take a step back and step into the witness, the observer, and get curious of why is this happening? What am I meant to see through this? What is this showing me? What is this opportunity presenting me with? And so another example might be maybe you are the person that plans everything in your friend group. And maybe there's this big birthday coming up and you are expected to plan it. But you have a lot going on in your life. But you're the person that plans everything. That's been your role. And so you are now in this experience where you could totally move into anger and resentment and still plan the whole thing and just be angry the whole time. Or you could also take a moment and take a step back and be like, this has been my role. But right now, this is not something that I have the bandwidth for. And someone else needs to take the lead on this. And communicating that, right? So not feeling like you have to hold on to that because that's who you are in your friend group. You're so much more than that. And again, too, it gives you information as to how people then respond in accordance to that. Do they hear you? Do they honor you? Do they not? Also knowing there's so many circumstances around that too, right? Doesn't mean that they're a bad person if they don't honor it. Maybe they're completely overwhelmed and now they have to think about something else, right? So a lot of this is stepping out of judgment and just being aware. Also aware that we don't know what's going on in people's lives. And I think that's a big one that we're seeing in the world today, right? People making choices, but we also don't know why they are making those choices, what happened in their life to make them see the world that way, to feel that way. And that's how we step into compassion and understanding and move more into a sense of unity rather than division, which is one of the themes for this month as well. So that was the first theme, all about what roles are serving you and what roles are no longer serving you. And before I move on to the next theme, the last thing I want to note about this is sometimes the roles that we have are given to us and some are just kind of like innate. Like they're all purposeful in their own way, but it's this idea of animals, right? Because the symbol is animal, and that's how the idea of the roles that we play came into my understanding of those, that combination of symbols. Because animals play roles in the world, in the animal kingdom, in the ecosystem, right? Each one plays a role. If you remove one, right, that's why there's so much concern over the bees. If we lose the pollinators, it's going to cause a lot of issues. They play a very important role. But we've also assigned roles to animals, whether it's from a spirit totem to, making a mule work the farm. We've assigned roles. So you may also be kind of stepping into that space of what roles have been assigned to me or I've assigned to myself because I thought I should. Maybe I had to. And what roles are feel very innate. Feel, roles that were chosen at a soul level to be experienced in this life. So I'm going to leave it there and let you simmer on that. If it resonates, of course, only if it resonates. If it doesn't, allow that to give you information as well. So then about a week later, I pulled some symbols, just tuning into August again, because we're in these really energetically potent months and time. And so the symbols that I pulled were ancestors, again, duality and shift. And this again is an energy I've spoken about in other energy readings, but this idea that we are seeing the idea of ancestors beyond just the bloodline. And again, this has been building, right? For decades, people have been really stepping into this place of honoring what family means to them, right? Chosen family. Family that isn't necessarily related. And so we've been broadening this idea of ancestor. And, if you look at it, even science says we come from stardust. And so when you think about star families, and if you think about we are connected, we are all source energy, just different expressions of it, right? You can see how everything, we are ancestors to everything. We are connected to everything. And what was really interesting, and I don't like to do predictions, but it came through very strongly, was that there was going to be a shift in the wars in the Middle East specifically. It felt like this idea, ancestors, duality, and shift, duality is often seen as one versus the other, right? Which is the energy of war. And I feel like there's going to be some sort of shift. And it may just be how you feel about it, your perception of it, and maybe something about it. There may be an energetic shift that does actually begin to kind of create this like seed point of really shifting past these ongoing wars that span centuries, right? It's like this old energy that's just, it's like a wound that just keeps getting reopened. And so I really hope that this is a point where we shift out of that, and it's not just like throwing a Band-Aid on it, but it's like really letting that wound heal. I hope. So that came up. And then I started pulling symbols for each week. I felt very connected to August, and so this is new. I pulled symbols, I tuned into each week and pulled symbols. So the first week was ancestors and earth. And this felt also very connected in June. One of the messages that came up was about connecting to the physical body. And then, coincidentally, Chiron, the wounded healer, entered Taurus, which is about many things, but also the body and the earth. And so earth, the symbol of earth, can mean many things, but in this context, I understood it as the body and the earth. Especially also because when I felt that pain, which I didn't really explain, so I will in a moment, it was the groin area, but also in the leg, which is connected to the root chakra. And so I hope this isn't confusing, but I didn't clarify how the sacral chakra played into that. I had a moment there, I was like, do I want to go into this? But I think it's important. So the sacral chakra, the first symbol was space, and that can be seen in many, many ways. But if you think about creational space, the space that allows something to be created, sacral chakra is connected to the womb. Life is created there, and creativity is oftentimes connected to the sacral chakra. But this is also the chakra around desire and pleasure and duality. And so when this chakra is imbalanced, right, there can be a lot of rigidity, right? Like rigidity around roles. But there's a lot of unconscious stuff there, right? They also say emotions are connected to sacral chakra. I like to think about feelings with the heart chakra, because they say you can sit with a feeling and it passes in 90 seconds, but sometimes emotions, we can get stuck in, say, like grief for a lifetime. So these are more dense energies, and I find that those can very much be connected to these roles. And the sacral chakra is also connected to the solar plexus, right, which is also about individuation, identity, who you are. But if we look at the word for the sacral chakra, which is Svadhisthana, it's, I'm blanking on the exact, it's like the dwelling place of self. So I'll put the exact one here. I can't think of the exact name, but essentially the dwelling place of self. And so I connect that to, because when this happened, I went into this whole channeling and connection with the chakras. It was really interesting. And so that very much for me is connected to these ideas of self, the ideas of self, of who we are, right? And then if you think about the root chakra, it helps to manifest them into the world, into our bodies, our physicality, how we show up. But oftentimes the Jivatman is if you think of Atman as like source, and Jivatman is like a unique frequency of source, right? Unique aspect of source that resides in the heart center. So it's kind of like the small s self, the roles that we identify with in the sacral chakra, and then the capital S self, who we truly are in the heart chakra. So I hope that made sense. I'm going to leave it there. If anyone has questions, you can always please ask in the comments, and I'll do some follow-ups. I also have a bunch of chakra videos. There's a whole chakra playlist if you want to check that out. And so week 1, ancestors and earth. Ancestors again. And the way I interpreted that was because an energy of ancestors is the sense of belonging, the sense of also forgiveness, right? Because because oftentimes a lot of our path is forgiving family, forgiving our ancestors, forgiving those around us, forgiving the self. And so this really connected with this idea of coming back home to the body and coming back home to earth. And again, too, knowing it's not subject to a week. This is also like a lifelong energy and journey. But you may be given opportunities to come back home to the body, to reconnect with the body, to reconnect with nature. You may just feel this urge, just go out and be in nature. So the next energy was really interesting. It was, I love these are actually like imprinted in my brain. I have my phone here just in case I forgot, but they're there. It was unnamed love. Well, now I'm second guessing myself. It was unnamed love, tone, and shift. And the way I interpret that is this. So the unnamed is beyond source, right? Because we even limit the idea of what source is. So it's really that which we can't even really begin to fathom through the thinking mind. And love not as necessarily like romantic love or familial love, but love as the frequency, love as the manifestation of source energy that we embody, that is within the embodiment of everything. It's almost like the frequency of love of source in a densified form that we then see as form. And so really deepening our connection with that as we lift in tone or octave or frequency or consciousness as we shift. And this is both individually and collectively, because they can't be separated, right? But we may see it more at a collective level, which I feel like we have been. As much as we can say that so much is going on in this world, the response from the collective has been really beautiful. Like people coming together, and supporting people that they don't know, supporting neighbors that they don't know. It's really beautiful. And I think focusing on that, holding them both, we can really kind of see what has been in this world and where we're headed. That's how I like to look at it, right? Not ignoring one, but holding them both as mirrors. And again, seeing what was and seeing what is, what's always been there and what will, I think, come to, like seeing like a flower blossom. So I really think that is deepening. And again, that's not going to happen overnight, but I do think that wheel is in motion. And so the next week, now my mind is blanking, so I'm going to check my notes for this. Okay, so it was very much connected, actually. It was the all and expansion, right? So the all is this idea of source. And so I have the all as source and the unnamed because we can't even really wrap our heads around what it is truly, And so the all and then expansion, because we're all getting to expand as a collective into that remembrance of that. And the example that I was just talking about, people coming together to support one another, I think that again is that mirror, is that reflection of that. And so the last week was fungi and stone. And the symbol of fungi was actually, I pulled it upside down. So if you do tarot or tarot, it can be reversed, has a different meaning. And I sat with this because I haven't really sat with it in that direction. But what came up for me is this. So fungi can represent many things, but for this, it felt like communication. Because if you think about the mycelial network, it's communicating with everything. And you see a lot of this is about the interconnectedness, right, of all of us globally on a planet. The message with fungi upside down in stone, which then we'll talk about a channeling I did, which will deepen the message here. What's beneath the surface? What is beneath the surface of everything, really? the bedrock, right? Stone, like the earth, bedrock, foundation. And really that comes down to often as belief systems. So if you are saying something, if you're doing something, what are the belief systems that are driving that? That may or may not be conscious, right? And again, Sacral Chakra. It's all connected. If you begin to zoom out and see it, it's all connected. So what is beneath the surface? And I think this is going to be really important at the world stage, when people are speaking, when people are sharing about things going on in the world, in your country, in your state, in your town. What is beneath the surface? What is driving those words? So maybe don't even listen to the words, but just watch them energetically. Feel into them. Feel into the words that they're using, how they're saying them, their pauses. Begin to read their energy. Not just listening to the words, because that will help you dive underneath to see what is there. It may not resonate. I wrote a whole blog post about reading energy, if that is something that you are curious about, because you're already doing it. You are always reading energy. We just don't think about it in that context. But I'll link it in the description if you want to read it, because you're already doing it. It's kind of wild when you start pulling on that thread. So what is underneath the surface? And that brings me to what came up in a channeling that I did, specifically around all of this. I pulled the symbols and I went into a channeling, and it spoke about a seed point this month, a seed point that will begin to shift in how we communicate. And it was interesting because it referenced like the internet. And the internet started decades ago, right? But who would have thought? I mean, I wouldn't have thought logging into AOL back in the 90s, like the internet would become what it has become. And so this kind of felt like that energy. And it talked about telepathy as well, which is why also that connecting with the energy of what someone is saying, right? Going beyond the words. But there's going to be this seed point this month that is going to shift communication as we know it. And I think that means many different, oh, I got chills. Okay, I mean, that means many different things, from telepathy, but communication with one another, communication with the planet, with the body, with everything beyond. And it talked about this idea of mirrors, kind of like a disco ball, but different, like these mirrors, and these mirrors building and building and building, and how we may be kind of that outside surface, kind of like we live on the surface of the planet, but then within that, there's all these mirrors, kind of representing this, everything we can't see. And you may or may not believe in like inner earth beings, but even this idea, if you look at just a square foot of soil, there's so much life there. There's so much life there that you can only see if you look. But even when you look, you can't see all the life that's living there. If you begin to dig up the soil, you begin to see more. But there's so much like microscopic life that we can't see with the naked eye. And that, again, is a mirror. There's so much more that we can't actually see because we forgot how to look, or we were maybe taught not to look. So within the earth, beyond the earth, communication is going to shift, and there's a seed point this month. And that brings me to June. The energy reading with June, I saw this wave, and the message was that it was going to crescendo in August. And for me, it feels like August feels like this integration month, because I felt this massive shift from the new moon solar eclipse in February to this full moon. Personally, it was connected astrologically. It was conjunct to my natal sun. But I felt like I was in this wave. But every day felt like there's like these little waves. And so if you were experiencing this micro or macro experience of energetic waves, this may or may not resonate, but August feels like this integration. So if you feel like you've just kind of come out of something, a healing process, a lifting, a releasing, a growth experience, this may be a time of integration. And so that's also why connecting with the body, connecting with nature, grounding, embodying, right? Integrating that wisdom, integrating that knowing of that experience, so that you can then not only experience life with that wisdom, but also share it. And not necessarily through words, right? But just if you maybe step into a deeper state of presence, when you, I just have to get pepper, 1 minute. When you embody that deep state of presence, people feel it. And they may not know what it is, but they feel it. And it consciously, unconsciously can kind of give permission to step into their own presence, to begin to integrate their own experiences, to be embodied. And I think that that's going to be really important. It has been very important to be embodied, to be grounded, to be present. And it's just going to, that's not going away. That feels like the future, right? Because everyone's so distracted and not present that it really feels like this shift into embodiment and presence is where the collective is going. Okay, friends, I think I covered everything. Please feel to ask any questions or share anything in the comments. I'm happy to do any follow-ups. I don't always maybe make sense or provide all the context needed. I just feel like you can read my mind. But that's the energy reading for August. Again, knowing may or may not resonate, but definitely also feel free if anything does. I know a lot of these readings that I've been doing for the weekly and the monthly have very much resonated, like shockingly so. So if you're curious about the symbols, you can always download them. I still need to make a page, but you can access them through the weekly readings. It's like a 2-week free trial, and you can download it there. But I will be sending it out on my email list soon, and I will be creating a page on my website, so you can just download it there as well. And I'll also be sharing the story about the symbols soon too. I'm feeling that call to do that. Okay, friends, until next time, stay curious.